Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. I'm finally feeling a bit better, which is awesome because patch 10.15 hit servers in just over a week, about, I guess, 10 days or so from now. And tonight I want to talk to you all about all of the Warlock changes that are coming to Warlock in patch 10.15. Now, these changes have been covered over the past, I guess, 2 months or so over the course of PTR, but there's been a lot of, I guess, downtime between the changes that have come in. App's gotten some changes, Demo's gotten a lot, Destro got a little bit, but it's changed the way that Destro plays a good bit, so we're going to cover all that tonight in this video. Now, later on this week, we're going to be covering, I guess, more what you should expect, like playstyle-wise, and all that kind of stuff for Warlock heading into the patch as well, but looking a bit more at sims, damage profiles, and all that. But I want to sort of just recap all the changes, so that is tonight's video. Like always, Week Wars add-ons, links to Twitch and Twitter down below, or Twitch and Discord, if you want to grab any of those there for free for you guys. To a similar extent, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons as well, like always, way too far in the video. For all support on Patreon, guys, thank you a million times. I appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, it should be a link up here, as well as links to Twitter and all that kind of stuff if you want to follow there. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. Okay, so getting into it all, starting with Affliction here, I'm going to reference the articles that I wrote for Wowhead for all the class changes, because Warlock had, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different builds with changes that came in and then were reverted and then implemented again. But I have all the changes, as far as I know, in the articles that I wrote for Wowhead. Not a shameless plug, but if you want them, I'll put them down below, I guess. For Affliction, Demo, and Destro, I've read them all this time. So, off the bat, now, Malefic Affliction has been removed. Malefic Affliction, for those that don't know, is, well, I guess, was the ability that was right here, that whenever you cast, Rapture, or whenever you cast Rapture, with UA active on a target, you would get a stack of Malefic Affliction. When it reached 3 stacks, if you raptured a 4th time, it would then trigger Dread Touch. Now, this is just gone. So whenever you put up your UA, for example, as long as you're playing Dread Touch, which I am here, as long as you put up UA and rapture 1 time, there's Dread Touch right there, right? You can move it over here and rapture again, and there's Dread Touch, right? It even maintains on the old target too if you want, for a bit of, like, I guess, swapping if you want. Probably not really worth it in most settings, but that is number 1. The first, just massive quality of life increase for Affliction heading into 10.15. Malefic Affliction has been a headache for since its inception during alpha or beta, and it's made target swapping a pain. Look at fights like Sonarth, fights like any fight that has a prio ad spawning on it. Sonarth, Dathia, where if you're playing Affliction, you could do big boss damage, but you couldn't swap targets, because if you moved your UA over, you lost your Malefic Affliction stacks. Then Soul Swap came around, which allowed you to move the UA around, maintaining Malefic Affliction, but when it died, it fell anyways. It's been a complete nightmare and really ruined a lot of, like, Affliction's, I feel like, strengths when it comes to progression. With that being removed, having the option just to go UA Rapture and it's active is huge for Affliction. First, really big quality of life increase. It's been replaced by Xavius' Gambit that we saw a minute ago. It increases UA damage by 15% and 30% at rank 1 and 2. MA was, I think, like, it was 39 at rank 2 out of 2. I don't know what the numbers were exactly, but they buffed Unstable Affliction by 10% to compensate for that. So this is basically the same thing as Malefic Affliction was, just, damage-wise, right? Now, on top of that, yeah, there's the buff to UA, right? On top of that, Dread Touch has been redesigned. I don't know why it's here. Shouldn't actually be, but it's okay. No big deal. Oh, okay, it sort of is, in a sense. Like, I put it here because Dread Touch, it's referencing the changes that were made to not having to have 3 stacks of MA on your target, which is further elaborated on in the article. So once again, already talked about it, but either way, you can indeed still, to show again, just put up a UA, Rapture once, Dread Touch, there it is. Very strong. I have actually 0 idea why this procced. It's a fire ring. I don't know how that procced off a Rapture. Was it? Oh, Shadow Flame embellishment. Sure, there you go. Okay, we're learning as we go. Either way, so on top of that, so Doom Blossom, the next big change here. Doom Blossom has been redesigned. Now, Doom Blossom is the talent that is shared with Dread Touch. Doom Blossom before worked off of Corruption being on a mob, but now the redesign says when Seed of Corruption damages targets suffering from your Unstable Affliction, they explode for shadow damage. Now, this is actually a pretty big change to Doom Blossom because, number 1, previously the old version did work in single target. It would give you a little bit of value in single target, whatever you were doing. So that clause is now dead because it works off of Seed of Corruption. No longer works off of Corruption and Malefic Affliction stacks. But whenever you cast Seed of Corruption, Doom Blossom explodes doing damage. And just very briefly to show, it is actually a very strong ability. So let me just sack this pet really quickly here, pump some damage, and you'll see that when we open up here, Doom Blossom does a lot of damage. I'm not fully ramping here or anything, we're just going in. It will do a good bit of damage at AoE. So watch our damage breakdown here. I'm gonna spam some seeds and watch Doom Blossom climb. There it is, 10%. I have no shards, but 12%. 11%. If we have more shards here, going into a pack and plus 13% essentially. Doom Blossom does a lot. It's doing almost twice the damage that it did previously when it was in its older form with Malefic Affliction and Corruption. So big increase there. I think that adds a lot of value to this build here as well, because you can still play Haunt with Haunted Soul for a bit of AoE value, still play Creeping Death, still play Xavius' Gambit, but play Doom Blossom over Dread Touch and still have big C damage, big SO damage, Vile Taint, Soul Flame helps as well, and all that. At this point, can go either Crescendo or go into Wrath of Consumption. Now, on top of that, there is one final change, and this is the Seed of Corruption. Seed of Corruption's cast time has been reduced to 2 seconds, was 2.5 seconds, and it also is a hasted cast time. So my seed currently right now, without any buffs or anything rolling, is a 1.6 second cast time, and this feels incredible. Another huge quality of life increase for Affliction heading into 10.1.5, because outside of having Field of Blossoms and Decaying Soul Satchel and Shadowlands, Seed's cast time has felt very slow in Dragonflight, and it's one of a plethora of reasons why AF's been a little and plus when Demo and Destro are better, why would you play AF? But it's enjoyable to some, right? But this reduction in cast time is real. So when you pair this cast time reduction with the Doom Blossom changes, with Xavius' Gambit and MA being removed and all that, Affliction's gained a lot of ground in the quality of life category, but also I think it's almost given value to some new builds, right? This build to me looks like almost one of, if not the strongest builds in Plus. You have Haunted Soul, Doom Blossom, you get Gambit, you get Creeping Death. You could also just play a build like this as well, playing Grim Reach, getting Haunt, Dark Lair full value, and still getting good single target value in Gambit, in Creeping Death, and having value in Doom Blossom by a seed. So we'll look at sims and damage profiles in the video later on this week. But either way, Affliction's become so much more enjoyable to play. Quality of life is through the roof in patch 10.1.5. All right, moving on to Destruction, the second spec here. Destruction has not received very many changes at all, actually heading into patch 10.1.5, but the changes that it did receive are actually really big, and it's almost like playing a different spec, because spoilers ahead, Destro with 2-minute Infernal and 3-minute Infernal are two different specs entirely. So the first change here, we'll talk about them both, there's only two. Crashing Chaos has been redesigned. Summon Infernal increases the damage of your next 8 casts of Chaos Bolt by 50%. It's 2 ranks, so 25 and 50, and PvP, sorry, rest in peace. Or your next 8 casts of Rain of Fire by 70%, or 35 and 78 rank 1 and 2 respectively. Huge increase here, obviously. We'll come back to this in a second as well. And the second change here is Dimensional Rift damage increased by 15%. Now, as much as I love and enjoy playing Dimensional Rift, unfortunately, it's still not as good as Chaos Incarnate. We'll get to that in a little bit. But back to Crashing Chaos. So this build here is what I assume to be the best single target build heading into patch 10.1.5 for Destro. This build is simming higher than what the current 3-minute build is on retail when you're playing this build here. I guess this build here. This build currently on retail right here is not as good as this build here heading into next patch, which is awesome. Crashing Chaos being buffed, or I guess just completely overhauled. The big thing with the Crashing Chaos being changed here is that, I mean, Grand Warlock's design's been part of the Destro class tree for a very long time. 2-minute Infernal and 3-minute Infernal are two different specs, because in AoE, Infernal is often less than 2 minutes with Grand Warlock's design. So Grand Warlock's design Destro and non-Grand Warlock's design Destro are two different specs. They play so differently, similar but different, and just feels so much better having your Infernal more often. Makes sense, having cooldowns more often feels better. The thing about this is that Infernal brand has been very bad for a long time, incredibly undertuned. It still is incredibly undertuned. And so is Crashing Chaos. Crashing Chaos in 10.1 is whenever you summon your Infernal, it makes your Chaos Bolts cost 1 shard and your Rain of Fires cost 2, I think, for like, I don't know, for 7 or 8 of them. But they redesigned it, now greatly increasing the damage of your Chaos Bolts and Rain of Fires. So this means that you have a relevant trait you can play to access Grand Warlock's design. And on top of that, Grand Warlock's design gives you a 2-minute Infernal and pure single target, which means that it also adds more value to Crashing Chaos, because more Infernals more often all the above. Very strong, just interaction there. On top of that, also Chaos Incarnate, max mastery with max Chaos Bolts feels pretty good, all that kind of stuff. I've tested this build a good bit in single target, so this also adds a lot of value to our class trinket for Destro. Now, our class trinket, like for Destro currently on retail, is bad. You don't play it. It is best for demo for days, probably your best trinket for the rest of the expansion. And Affliction with Malevolent Visionary build, that's also good. Destruction, it's been pretty for a while because, I mean, like your Infernals once every 3 minutes, and there is no way to empower your abilities, really. Your Infernal came down, gave you a bit more shard gen, but like, you weren't even playing any of the enhancements, which is, more shard gen, great. Demo's or Destro's profile has been in a flat line since 10.0 because you just do consistent damage by maintaining Madness of the Azakir, casting Incinerates and Bolts, and that's that, right? Now that changes. Now, I don't have any Clash Trinket stacks here, but for example, that changes now, because whenever you end up casting your Infernal past your first one of the fight, you're going to end up getting an insane amount of value in it, right? You're going to put your Infernal down, you're going to have your next 8 Chaos Bolts buffed by Crashing Chaos, and they're going to do a lot of damage. I've had Chaos Bolts hitting for 750k, 800k. I can hit 1,000,000 Chaos Bolt if I go into my Infernal with full CDF tier bonus buff with 10 stack of Clash Trinket, and if you roll the right effects from Spoils plus Potion plus Sophic Devotion proc, you can hit 1,000,000 plus Chaos Bolts. It is exceptionally strong. Now your Clash Trinket only lasts 10 seconds, so you end up likely having to set up your burn a bit. This is one of the new Infernal skins, by the way. It's really cool. You have to set up your burn a bit by having 4-ish shards stored. Let's say Infernal's coming up, you have Immolate rolling, you want to typically pre-CDF or whatever, conflagrate, then drop your Infernal and just begin dumping Chaos Bolts with trinkets, with potions, all that. You want to do as much damage as possible in this burst window because your Clash Trinket lasts 10 seconds, even though Crashing Chaos lasts a long time. You're not going to be able to buff every Chaos Bolt with Clash Trinket, but still, it leads to very strong, very high peaks, I guess peaks and valleys when it comes to your damage profile, but it ends up being a few thousand DPS ahead of what the current 3-minute build is on retail and single target, which is strong. If you can bring those strong cooldown-based profiles to fights, whether it's Mythic Plus or whether it's in raiding, it's a very, very strong, it's a strong profile to bring. Being able to allocate CDs in certain parts of a fight and kill ads and all the above. So that build looks strong. To a similar extent, it's also looking to be best in AoE. We'll look at that more in the video coming up in a few days with damage profiles and everything. But Crashing Chaos, Infernal, Grand Warlock's design looks to be the best build basically everywhere in single target and AoE, and it adds value to your Clash Trinket. Now, when it comes to the Dimensional Rift changes, unfortunately, we'll look at this in a few days as well in the video in Sims, but spoilers ahead. Unfortunately, Dimensional Rift is still not as good as Chaos Incarnate. There's talk about some builds playing a lot of crit and haste and moving away from mastery, so it lessens the loss of Chaos Incarnate. But from what I've seen in my own sims and things, Incarnate is ahead of Dimensional Rift by about 3,000-ish DPS for my own sims, which could be lessened by playing more crit haste gear, right? But either way, if you like Rift as much as I do, love for it to be good, but unfortunately it's still far behind, or a little bit behind, but at the same time, at least they're actually buffing it and sort of acknowledging the fact that, hey, it is behind a bit. Now, in an optimal world, I'd love a situation where Dimensional Rift is your best option in single target, and Chaos Incarnate is the play in Spread Havoc Cleave or Mass AoE for max, mastery gain on bolts and random fires and things. Cleave-based settings, Mythic Plus, all that. So we'll see where it goes. But at the same time, if you're a fan of Dimensional Rift, it's not incredibly far behind, and we'll see where things progress when it comes to crit haste builds comparatively to mastery. It does give a bit more mobility, I guess. It gives a little bit more mobility if it's pre-planned movement. So we'll see where it goes. I like Rift, all the above. Hopefully a 10.2 thing is we can get this separated and have I don't know, Rift somewhere else with Incarnate being on its own. But it's not too far behind. But unfortunately, if you're a fan of Rift, still not better than Chaos Incarnate. But if you're a fan of 2-minute Infernal or sub 2-minute Infernal in AoE, Crashing Chaos and Grandmark's design are looking really strong in patch 10.15. Alrighty, and finally we have Demonology. Now, Demonology's gotten a lot of changes over the course of PTR, and they were in an attempt to address, it's actually a note here, working to reduce the peaks and valleys of Demonology's throughput by depowering called Dreadstalkers. They wanted to buff our sustain outside cooldowns, because I mean our damage outside of cooldowns is nothing. This is less than tank damage, then you burst to 800k, 1,000,000 DPS, and you're stronger than the rest of the raid combined, right? So these changes were an attempt to alleviate that and make us a bit more consistent. They might have done a small little bit, but unfortunately, when you have the power of Nether Portal, Ramp Tyrian, Nether Portal, Clash Trinket, Tier Set, Iridius Fragment, Potion, Power Infusion, Bloodlust, and in a few weeks, Augmentation Evoker, it's hard to break up those kind of damage profiles. It's likely a thing that needs to happen in 10.2 is just break up Nether Portal or change it somehow, but that's a 10.2 video. Either way, the changes that came in. So Rift Through the Portal, this is our third dog. It is gone. Demonic Meteor is gone, and Fell Might is gone. Shadowflame Acolyte and Fell Covenant. So these were talents they added initially, or at least Shadowflame Acolyte was. Then there's a lot of feedback given on, hey, removing Demonic Knowledge shouldn't be a thing because it really hurts Testro's rotation or Demo's rotation, all that. And Shadowflame Acolyte was indeed here, basically, when they removed Demonic Knowledge. Later on, they added Knowledge back, removed Acolyte, but also removed Fell Covenant, which is actually a great positive. I didn't like that ability at all. I don't think anybody really did. I'm sure some did. Don't hate me. They also added back Shadow's Bite. So passively, Handy Roll damage increased by 25%, Implosion 15, Dreadstalkers by 15, Demon Bolt damage by 20. Now, Dreadstalker damage being increased here, I would assume was to compensate for the third dog being removed. And when it came to third dog, they cited the fact that it was hard to tune because of things like Dreadlash, Carnivorous Stalkers, Hellmaster Stratagem, and I guess the RNG of having Carnivorous, give more Dreadlash damage and have it proc Hellmaster Stratagem and things like that, right? So this buff, I would assume, was to compensate for that a bit, help with sustain a little bit as well. To a similar extent, Hand Gul'dan damage being buffed, Demon Bolt damage being buffed. So there are attempts being made here to, I guess, address our sustain damage. Didn't really make a huge difference either way, but, there are attempts being made, and, credit where credit's due. So Bombers. Soul Shard cost has been removed, was 2. Love the ability. Unfortunately, still not as good as Demonic Strength when you have things like Fell and Steel and Heavy Handed and Fell Sunder and Cavitation and Torn Armaments and Expendables and all these abilities that empower your Felguard. But it's very cool to have this be 0 shards. Hopefully it's buffed later on to be competitive because this thing being no shards feels great. And it's basically AoE damage twice as often as Demonic Strength. When half your talents empower your Felguard, it's a little rough to compete against. But that was changed nonetheless. So Umbral Blaze has been changed, and spoilers ahead for the video in a few days, it is now your best option when it comes to single target, talent-wise. It's been basically doubled as far as proc chance is concerned, being a 30% chance, which is pretty big, and it now retains remaining damage when reapplied. So what this means, this is likely our best single target build heading in the next patch. Once again, a few days from now, we'll look at Sims. But what that means is that, so whenever Umbral Blaze procs, hopefully we can get the proc here. Let's say it procs, and it procs again while you have an Umbral Blaze active. It will basically store the damage from the previous Umbral Blaze and put it into the new Umbral Blaze. For example, 11k damage here. If it can reproc, maybe. It probably won't, because I'm actually testing it here. Yeah, it probably won't proc for me because I'm actually, testing it out and, everything else here. But basically, the old Umbral Blaze wouldn't store the damage. If it procced, it would just literally refresh, and hey, it overrides Tough Life. It is what it is, right? And of course, it won't reproc from you. I've seen it before. It's fine. But Umbral Blaze actually ends up being a pretty competitive talent in single target, and one that you would likely want to play in basically every setting. Proc for me? Proc? There you go. Yeah, it's hitting for 15,000 damage, roughly. The tooltip doesn't update, but it's hitting for more because it pandemic or I guess added on the last little bit of damage there. So it is hitting harder than baseline Umbral Blaze. And honestly, with a 30% chance to proc, it's basically 1 in 3. Close enough, with Florida math rounding up. That's pretty solid. These are the changes that needed to be competitive, and it is looking to be one of our better options in single target. There's that. New talents here: Heavy Handed, Cavitation, Imperator, Malefic Impact. This increases your Felguard's crit strike chance by 10%, and it's over here. It is right there. This is actually simming higher than Fell and Steel. This thing's been nerfed too much. It is very irrelevant, I feel like, at this point. It doesn't interact with this thing anymore either, so there's that. This thing is better than this and all the Sims that I've seen it run. Cavitate, that's Heavy-Handed. Cavitation increases your Felguard's damaging critical strikes by 10% and 20%. It's a 2-rank node, which is right here. Not played in single target. It is played in our AoE build from what I've seen. Malefic Impact being here, increases hand damage and crit strike chance of hand damage. 2-rank talent here, 8 and 16. And Imperator, or Imperator, I don't know how to say it. It increases Imp, Firebolt, crit strike chance by 5% and 10%. Not really worth it in single target, but hey, it's cool. And they all are sort of here to, like, I guess, affect and or increase sustained damage. We're only really playing one of the four in single target, and one of the four, I guess two of the four in AoE, but nonetheless, they are there. Dread Calling is now 2 ranks. Demonic Calling and Inner Demons are now 1, and they've been moved. Dread Calling is now here with 2 ranks, and Inner Demons is here with 1 rank, which is great. We only played it at 1 rank anyways for the actual pet summons, right? The Fuel Power Siphon. And to a similar extent, Demonic Calling is now here at rank 1 out of 1 as well. So there's that. We played them for the effect, basically. The higher chances really didn't matter. So there's that. Now, outside of that, like I mentioned, the build is still playing Nether Portal Pit Lord stuff. You are indeed playing Ray of Tyranny still, all that. You're playing Umbral Blaze. You're not playing Imp Gang Boss, and you're playing Sack Souls. Now, when I say Sack Souls, don't worry, Fell Covenant is gone. Sack Souls rotationally is essentially the same thing as playing Antoran Armaments and Expendables, meaning that it's basically a passive talent. You just summon pets, and it buffs your bolts, your Shadow Bolts and Demon Bolts. Barring there being a build that emerges playing Implosion and things, which would probably not want Sack Souls, this looks to be the best single target build out there. It is worth noting also that Bloodbound Imps is also chosen here. This sort of helps alleviate the loss of third dog with it giving you a third demonic core. This is worded awkwardly, but the chance of receiving a demonic core from a wild imp is increased by 5% or 10% when imploded. It's often mixed up, being a rank 1 trait. People often think it's like 5% at rank 1 or 10% at rank 2 or whatever. But basically, it gives you a 5% increased chance whenever a wild imp expires, because they have a chance to give you demonic cores whenever they expire naturally. So this increases that chance by 5%. It also increases it by 10, or I guess so, increases it, however you want to word it, by 10% if you implode them. So it works in both single target and AoE, and helps alleviate the issues of losing your third dog, which loses you a demonic core stack once every 20 seconds. But from what I've seen rotationally with Demonology in 10.15 of testing and things, honestly, really not a whole lot of changes. The opener is the same. You're still casting portals, Soulburn, Fellow Guard, Grimoires, dogs, all that kind of stuff. And nothing really changes. It feels basically the same. You have, you know, I'm playing my trinket, by the way. Same opener, same Tyrant summons, portal, and even for testing it in combat for a while, for the most part, my pets are on passive, which is sick. Send in the army. There they go. Look at the Pit Lord waddle in. For the most part, even the Grimoire Fellow Guard sync with your tier bonus has felt about the same. Maybe a couple seconds off compared to having third dog, but overall, nearly the same. Really shouldn't change much at all as far as PI timings or anything at all, really. And Demo still feels like Demonology. Demo still feels like Demo. Even when it comes to AoE, third dog is gone, but they buffed Implosion, they buffed Call Dreadstalkers, they buffed Hand of Gul'dan. And the build is still sort of there with Cavitation being a thing and all that. We'll look at that in a few days as well in that video. But, I mean, TLDR, Demo's still Demo, and it's still cranking as well in 10.1.5. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully it answers the questions you might have had about Warlock heading into patch 10.15 if you've been following it over the course of PTR or coming back after a break from, you know, the launch of 10.1. I think Warlock has slowly gotten a little better every single patch, whether it's been, you know, 10.1 or 10.0.5 and now 10.15. I have some hopes for 10.2, but I think Warlock with 2-minute Infernal, Seed cast time being reduced, and some of the demo changes is going to be pretty enjoyable in 10.15, and we'll see what 10.2 holds. So, yeah, if you have any questions, put them down below. I'll be sure to get back to you guys. To a similar extent, Week Wars add-ons and profiles, like I said earlier, all for free on Twitch and in Discord. Links down below if you want to grab those. I also want to give one huge shout out again to my patrons for in the video. We're also part on Patreon, guys. Like always, thank you a million times. I really appreciate it. If you look at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here, as well as down below in the video description. So, now I've got a lot of videos planned for 10.2. I want to get into feedback and things early for 10.2. So, chances are high, later on, I guess next week, I don't even know the date, but the weekend leading into the patch coming out, I want to have the Destro Demo AF guides coming out, I think Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and the patch drops, and give it a week or two, and we're going to have 10.2 content rolling, because I would assume it's July 2nd currently now, at 4:30 in the morning. I would assume that within a month and a half or 2 months max, we'll be in 10.2 PTR, which is probably going to be sooner than it seems. So, fingers crossed, more changes, and yeah, I guess we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, hit the like and sub buttons below. It helps out a ton. I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.